Hello, welcome to September 20th, 2022. My name is Kurt, and this is my daily Good Life meditation video. I make this video each and every morning, quite early. It's now about 4:45, and I do this to think about my life objectives and principles, to tinker with these and attempt to improve them, and to think about how I did living well yesterday, how I did sleeping well yesterday, and to plan for the coming day. First, last night and yesterday. Second night in a row that I didn't sleep so well. I was up before the alarm, tossing and turning, mostly just thinking about work. It's an interesting time right now at work. Actually, it's a good time. Finished a major project yesterday. The project that I was hired for the particular job that I have. Took me 9.5 months to do it, leading the effort, leading a team of about 8 to get through this project, and we did it. We delivered everything, all 11 items of scope, on time and to specification. So I'm proud of that. I should sleep better, but I don't. I didn't. But lately I have been sleeping better. Just last night and the other day. Last night and the night before. Oh yeah, yesterday was a bad day. Started off bad. It was a good day all around, but both Yumiko and I were. I would characterize it as depressed in the morning. It was a Monday. Yumiko and I both faced a tough day of work ahead of us, and we were both pretty down in the dumps. Usually that breaks about half an hour into the workday. I start at work at 7 a.m. So usually by 7:30 I've broken out of my morning blues. And I didn't. Took almost the whole morning to get out of that. By the afternoon I was headlong going at it, and I was feeling better. Well, nevertheless, it was a tough day. I wouldn't say it was a bad day. It was just a tough day. Day of dreaming of retirement. It's interesting how this becomes more unbearable the older I get. Yumiko too. She feels the same way. If it wasn't for the fact that we've got a daughter still in college, we would call it quits now and go back to Japan. But we got to see Emily through the end, and we will. Any family, if you see this, that's not a problem. That's what we signed up for when we chose to become parents. So it's our obligation and responsibility, and we gladly do it. We're so proud of you. All right. Other than that, so how was I challenged yesterday? And how did I use my good life principles to help me out? I mainly enlisted Fortitude, which is the sub-principle of maturity, to push through. I just drove myself through to completion yesterday. It was exhausting, but I did it. Okay, what else? Oh, I was able to get a hold of the landlord yesterday, and I found out that we need 30 days notice if we're going to vacate this place. So basically by the end of next week. And I did reach out to the landlord of the new place that we're looking at. They were sick yesterday, so I couldn't talk to them, but hopefully I'll talk to them today. And if they're available, maybe I'll try to secure that one place in Huntington Beach. That would be interesting to wind up back in Huntington Beach, which was the first place I lived after I was born. My parents owned a home there. It'd be interesting to go back. Interesting to think that maybe I picked up this wanderlust from them, because they didn't stay in Huntington Beach. They went one place, and then another, and then another, and then another. They always bought places. All right, let's do the Good Life Creed. First, my 7 objectives, as follows. Number 1 is to be always ready to die, to have my life's affairs in order, my relationships sound, and my life's work in a ready state to leave behind. And I do. I think my affairs are in as best shape as I possibly can be. Have a little bit of debt right now, like to get rid of that. But it's this give and take, supporting Emily through college. We want her to get through school without having to incur any college debt. So as a rule, though, Yumiko and I are incurring it. Now, I do have a college fund set up for her, and it's about time I start using it. I've been trying to hold off using it as long as possible. So, but I guess we've reached the point, otherwise I'm going to run out of time, and then I won't have a chance to use it. What do you do if that happens? If you have no college to apply the college fund for? So I better use it. And then the relationships are good. Always working on the relationship with my wife. I mean, my mother. And then 3, my life's work is done going alone. So yeah. 2, the principle, the objective of making good and effective use of my time. Just doing things that are useful, helpful, worthwhile throughout the day. And I do. I work hard. I read a lot. I make videos like this, which I think are helpful to me in developing and maintaining my life objectives and principles, and maybe helpful to others who might might be helped by these things. I mean, I found them very useful. Excuse me, the Good Life Creed has improved my life and my well-being immensely, giving me the deepest peace and satisfaction I've known in my life. Made me ready for death. Helped me to find a way to extract out virtue of my everyday of living, so that the days are practically chock full of good moments. Helped me to turn the challenges into opportunities to improve my self-control and my fortitude. Yeah. 3, the development and maintenance of good and sound life principles. This Good Life Creed is exactly that. And I do work on this every day. I make this video and I think about these objectives and principles. I also think about them through the day, especially when I'm out walking around. Speaking of which, yesterday, I usually read when I walk. Yesterday, when I took the dogs for a walk, and we went for a good long walk, I just carried my book and thought. It was good. I needed to give my eyes a break from looking at stuff. I just kind of glazed over. Listened to music for a little bit, then I turned that off and I just walked. It was good. Next, number 4 is to cultivate good emotional reactions, so that I am reacting well to the challenges. Like yesterday, waking up feeling kind of down and maybe even depressed about the difficult day ahead. I reacted well to that. When Yumiko asked me how I was, I didn't hide it. I told her, Yumiko, I feel down today. I feel depressed. Today's going to be a tough day. She said she felt the same, but I didn't react poorly. I reacted honestly to someone that asked me honestly. My partner, who is someone who should know and should know her own partner's depths. I'm not one to complain unduly to strangers or to people that are coworkers or etc. I tend to hold that in and talk about things at more of a surface level thing. But Yumiko should know my inner self, just like she lets me know her inner self. Next is just to do good things throughout the day. That's the next principle. And then after that, objective that is. The next objective is to recognize my true limits and my true opportunities, so that I'm applying myself to activities and towards ends that are something I can actually reach and contribute to. Next is, I'm just thinking in mind, like sometimes we can spend our days, pontificating the news and events of the day to little end, mostly just heat and light. Doesn't really get us anywhere. I'd rather apply myself to the situations and the opportunities ready at hand, right before me, and to, as they would say, to think global, but act local. Act local. Local being that which is within the scope of my control. Hey, there's a good one. That's kind of a hippie slogan. And lastly, to do just one thing at a time, and to do that thing slowly and deliberately and carefully. And I do try to do that, except when I've had too much coffee. Okay, those are my 7 life objectives. The objectives as described in my book, Going Alone, available on Amazon and at goingalone.org if you fancy a signed copy. Signed and illustrated. I tend to draw in color inside the book, like a 5-year-old. Okay, now my 32 principles as follows. Number 1 is the principle of war, to always be fighting against the things that I think are true, the propositions that I already hold, and the ideas which are laid before me, or which I find before me that beckon to be onboarded as true and of substance. I want to run them through the ringer. I want to test them out to see if that is so. 2, the principle of reason, and the sub-principles of honesty, objectivity, doubt, and humiliation. 4 sub-principles. Reason is the tool that I use. It's the mechanism by which I render truth from the facts of the world, or the seeming facts of the world. I do this by 1, being honest with myself, 2, objective with the way I see things, looking at them from as many sides as possible, including contrary sides, contrary to my current understanding and my current perspective. I try to, again, put on the hat of another viewer. 3, I'm a fierce skeptic. I begin with doubt and a case has to be made for belief, rather than the other way around. A proposition is assumed to not be true until rendered or proven otherwise. And then finally, humiliation, a great experience when we realize that we're wrong, and instead of rejecting the whole thing outright and walking away because I feel uncomfortable, I will be gladdened by the fact that I have been shown to be wrong, and I'm embarrassed and maybe a little bit unsettled and upset by that fact. But what a blessing to have discovered that I'm wrong, even if it hurts. Next is Temperance. No. The homunculus. I went way astray there. The homunculus is the thing. It's not really a real thing. It's just another word that I use to describe my consciousness, and maybe my conscience as well, which seems to be a function of the consciousness. Struggling with that word this morning. My consciousness is the thing that seems to be happening right inside my head, right behind here, behind my forehead, a little above and behind the eyes, and between the ears there. It's that sense of being awake and alive. I believe that that's all I get in terms of it's an emergent property of the the electrical storm and chemical storm going on inside my skull, in my nervous system. And I believe I just get that for the time that my body is alive. I don't think it lasts after I'm dead. There's no good reason to think that's the case. So I dismiss the concept of a soul. I don't think that there's been any good case made that a soul is something real. It's more, or anything more than wishful thinking by those who are afraid of death and wish to carry on beyond the life. I choose to face down that challenge, accept my mortality, and recognize that the moments that I have right now that I'm alive may be all that I'll ever get, whatever culmination I have of these, and whatever remaining time I have. So I label that homunculus, and I picture it as like a little person inside my head. Not really, but really. And I do that because I want to remember that he's trapped. In my case, a he, of course, he's trapped, and won't get out, will die with me. The next principle, and this next principle kind of goes with the homunculus. The next principle is called the Anchorhold. It's the suggestion that each of our homunculi, because you have one too, according to my worldview, each of our homunculi reside like a little man or a little woman, standing or sitting or laying upon a rock, just poking out of the sea, just a little bit out of the sea. You can imagine like that. And that rock is the top of a seamount, going deep, deep down, right? Now, the tricky thing is you don't want to fall into the sea. It's very deep and cold and dangerous. So the rocks are slippery because the water splashes, the tide rises, and then the waves are churning, and the tide goes down, and the splash, and the sunlight, etc. And there's maybe green sea moss on it or something like that, seaweed. So be very careful. And when you slip and go in, that's the end of you. Each of us is on our own little anchor hold. You have yours, I have mine, and we yell to each other across the void, "Hey, good morning." Maybe wave at someone a little more distance. If we can, write something on a sign, although we don't have a sign, we can say, "Hey." Semaphore with flags. No, we don't have any of that nonsense. It's all yelling and gesturing. That's all it is. I remember that because it helps me to remember that, one, that the homunculus is trapped, and two, that each of us is trapped alone. When I die, I will go down alone. Even if someone reaches out and holds my hand, I'm still alone. We all die alone. There's one. Even if we're surrounded by our loved ones, holding our hands on both sides, wetting our brow with a moist cloth, the moments that we take our last rattling breaths, we're dying alone. And then we go from that alone to something that's beyond alone. Jeez Louise. Sorry. Something that's beyond or alone. Because death is beyond alone. I mean, if you're utterly unaware, utterly incapable of awareness, utterly without any substance or being of any sort, no soul, no afterlife, no reincarnation, just utter dissolution and complete oblivion. That's beyond alone. Next is the home of good and evil. In my worldview, not only do we not have souls, there is no God. And that means that there's nobody looking after us after we die or having any plan for us. We're just kind of here on our own. That also means that good and evil are not absolutes in the universe. They're not chiseled on any tablets anywhere. Good and evil are right and wrong. Good and evil, whatever you want to call them, are opinions that we develop about the state of the world and about the options that are before us and the things that happen that we operate with and we strive for. The home of good and evil is with the homunculus. If you take the homunculus back to the skull, it's like, I like to picture it like written in chalk. If the homunculus is a little man in my head writing in chalk, principle number 1, number, fortitude, virtue, etc. I define right and wrong simply as whatever promotes or is contrary to the improvement of the well-being of thinking creatures. And I define evil as the active, deliberate execution of decisions that fail, that do not contribute to well-being. So I have a definition of right and wrong. I have a definition of good and evil even. They're not reliant on any deity. They're reliant merely on reason and observation of the world and the experience of life, and attempting to cooperate with others to identify and achieve worthwhile ends. After that principle comes the principle of purpose. My purpose are three. The first one is, I call it biology, which is not, I don't use a word to describe natural science. I use that to mean the biological imperative to reproduce, to have sex, make a child, raise that child to successful adulthood, and then for me to die and get the hell out of the way. Step aside, help with the grandkids, then die and get the hell out of the way. It's a biological mandate. We see it all throughout the natural world, where things exist, where living things exist. So I understand that. It seems to be a directive. It's maybe the only directive that nature gives us. And it's not a directive from any god. It's just a directive from the fact that that's how biological systems work. That's how they succeed. If we didn't have that imperative and we didn't have that motive, within us, as part and parcel of what we are as living creatures, we wouldn't be here. Two is the improvement of the well-being of thinking creatures, virtue, as I've described already. Three is whatever personal purpose I want to achieve in my life. And for me, that personal purpose is the sharing of my story going alone and the resulting good life creed, which is in a chapter of the book called The Good Life. So those are my three purpose, so to speak, that help me to fulfill my life purpose and give my life purpose. Next is the atomic principle. Everything is made of little bits and pieces that are flowing and changing and constantly transforming. So too, you and me and all living things. When we die, our atoms and molecules and compounds will, scatter away, be reused, and maybe burned up if we cremated, and the energy will dissipate out into space. But that'll be the end of us. So the atomic principle is a reminder of that we are temporary, we are substantive only to the extent that our biological system, our living biological system, can keep us healthy and intact, but that we're all beginning to fall apart. We all begin to fall apart sometime in our 20s, and it's downhill all the way from there. But it's like riding a toboggan down a hill. We can enjoy the ride down the hill, even though we're headed towards it's an icy lake at the bottom, and the ice is thin. Okay, the next principle is the principle of nature. Everything has some particular nature, and it's good to recognize what that nature is so that we can better abide how the world really works. Like it's the nature of Tuesdays to follow Mondays, to be a little bit of a relief, a little closer to the weekend, but still hard, challenging day ahead. Pardon me. It's the nature of my Tuesdays, to have a particular set of meetings that I anticipate and I'm ready for. You see how this goes. You can pick up and examine everything and anyone and point out what their nature is. It's the nature of this dog laying right here. You might hear him, breathe in from time to time. It's the nature of him to be aware that in about 30 minutes, it's time for his walk. Maybe 40 minutes, and he'll get up and get ready. I know that, so I have to keep this moving. The next principle is the pirate ride. The pirate ride is a funny name for a principle that I use to describe my idea, my belief maybe, that free will is an illusion. I came up with this funny title by virtue of my remembrance of a ride at Disneyland called the Pirates of the Caribbean, where as a boy I remember riding through on the little boat, watching the pirates, the animatronic robots, doing their thing, and in particular the two pirates that were having the fight across the water, the one on the barrel, going up and down, and the other taking the sharpshooter with a jug of rum, and they're bam, and they go up and bam, and the boat would go through the middle, right, and they'd be shooting across at each other. And I would go through, and next year, because we lived close to Disneyland as a kid, next year you'd go through and they're still doing it, the next year they're still doing it. And then as an adult, this was like about 2 years ago, I took my family to Disneyland, and we went through and they're still doing it. And I was thinking to myself, that's us. I mean, okay, we're not creatures of routine like that, but we are programmed without any programmer. It's just, our DNA is an encoding of best practice from what has allowed our ancestors in the past to survive. Whatever worked, well, at least better put, whatever didn't kill us, was codified into our operating system, so to speak. Again, I'm trespassing on words that make it sound like there might be a programmer or an operator or a God, but I don't think there is. These are, DNA collects what doesn't kill us and carries it on. Our system, though, is so complex and so robust that it gives us the appearance of being willful, motive creatures. I don't think we are. I think we are. We're definitely motive creatures, but we definitely have some will. But that will is prodded and pushed and poked at every side, at every moment, by everything that's happening about us, which in fact, in turn, is impacted by everything happening about it. It extends all the way back to everything that's happening throughout the universe from the moment the Big Bang occurred. All of that, you could almost say, and I'm not a determinist, I'm more of a compatibilist when it comes to free will, but we are compatible with the choices we are making are compatible with whatever has been happening throughout the universe up until the moment of now. It's a very vast and complex geometry and tapestry of a cause and effect. But whether I raised this hand just now, or I raised that hand just now, the universe had a lot to say, maybe everything to say, about how that went down. I can't prove this, but I believe it. I hold it on faith. And I'm ready and willing, eager maybe, to be disabused of this potential error. Bring it on. Next is after the pirate ride is maturity, which has, I think, 3 sub-principles. Let's see if I can pull them out of my head. Maturity consists of wisdom, fortitude, and integrity. We are mature when we wisely remember our past successes and failures. So this is why maturity takes a while, right? Because you have to live some life and have developed some successes and failures to look back on. It's hard to learn maturity, gain maturity through books. You have to do it yourself, mostly. Fortitude, because it doesn't matter if we have the experience if we don't have the strength to do better in the future. Fortitude is important to that capacity. Fortitude's helpful with a lot of stuff. Helped me get through the day yesterday. And then integrity. Integrity is when our fortitude and decision making are in alignment with our known best practices, including our principles. So when we put those 3 things together, wisdom, fortitude, and integrity, we become mature. The next principle is this is where I start to go astray. I have to look at the book. Excuse me. So in the aforementioned chapter, The Good Life, I have all of these principles and objectives laid out and explained. So here it is. Yeah, I was right. So here it is. So there was principle of maturity there, and now the next one is the social principle. The social principle, which simply suggests that it's good for us to be human, to be social human beings, right? To not sequester ourselves away from others. And even though I sit here alone in the morning like this, my wife's asleep, I'm a very social man all day long in meetings, leading meetings, talking to people all day long, and with my wife in the evening and on the weekends. As Emily liked to say, Mom and Dad are always together, and we are. So it's funny that I wrote a book called Going Alone, because I'm a guy that's rarely alone. And that's the way I like it. But I did go alone when I wrote to make the book, because I had a purpose in going alone. And I did spend a lot of time out in the desert going alone. So the social principle has three sub-principles: diplomacy, justice, and conspiracy. Diplomacy suggests that we need to be diplomats, to be working together towards better ends, debating and discussing right principles, disabusing ourselves, like I like to say, of our errors, and improving. Justice, because seeking after justice, is a principal aim of a social collective, right? We set up courts of law, and we set up police systems to help us to enforce justice towards well-being of our group. And we can do that. We do that. We need to participate in that. And even if that's just going to work and paying your taxes to ensure that justice is there's the means to have justice, that end achieved. And then conspiracy, not in the conspiratorial sense of thinking of doing something bad together, but conspiring towards well-being, conspiring towards good, being socially engaged, discussing our views, refining our views, our ideas, and aligning best practices together to help to build the better state. Next is public speaking. Yeah, that's the next one. Public speaking has 4 sub-principles. Let's see if I can remember these. Small words, rumor, gossip, and what's the 4th one? Prudence, that's right. But I want to arrange that a little bit. I want to say small words, prudence, rumor, and gossip. Public speaking simply is my suggestion to use good communication, and to both written and spoken. Small words suggest not necessarily small words, but best words. Maybe I should change that to best words. To choose the right words for the circumstance, to not be overly flowery or showy or gratuitous with our speaking, but to try to find the words that communicate our meaning clearly and adroitly, to use a fancy word. Prudence is is a little bit different from integrity, right? Because I talked about integrity a few principles back when I was talking about maturity. Integrity is when we're sound. We have our decision making is sound in alignment with our principles. Prudence is the more of a verb. It's the activity of doing that, and I'm trying to put that into play when I'm actually speaking. When I'm exercising, there's like a little prudence engine inside my head that is working to align what I'm saying with my values. It's a tricky thing to do. It's like doing the editing while we're writing at the same time. Tough work. And then lastly was I said rumor and gossip. Rumor is just trading in unfounded suspicions. I don't do that. I don't want to contribute to upset and confusion in any group or organization. So unless there's a good reason to something, I won't pass it along. And gossip is talking about other people behind their back in such a way that if you suddenly discovered they were standing right behind you and overhearing what you were saying, you would be embarrassed by that fact. I have trained myself to this so strongly, because this is such, I consider this a sin not against any gods, but a sin against good living, well-being, that I simply don't do this. I can't remember the last time I've done it. I catch myself being tempted to do it, but I see it coming, and it doesn't get me anymore. I think the next one is the start of Temperance. I think that's the next one. That's right. The Temperance begins a fiver. There's 5 principles that I've ordered in such a way that they kind of build one upon another. These are, first of these is Temperance, followed by Life Will Not Go Well, the Horror Show, That Which Must Be Borne, and the Feast of Offal. Let's do these and treat these as a group. Temperance speaks to our ability to control our decision making and our consumption of all things. How much we work, how much we play, how much we drink or eat, how much sex we have, even how much TV we watch, how much reading we do, how much we watch, anything at all, sports, whatever you want to do, just everything in moderation. And that's a useful tool to have, to be able to then pull back the throttle and say, that's been just enough, because we can better use this with the other things that I'm about to cover. Mainly our emotional reactions to a difficult life. The next one is life will not go well. Life will not go well. Things are going to happen today and tomorrow, next week, on and on and on, that will be variations from the idea that we have, the path that we have in mind about how things should go. And it's very easy for us to get upset when we don't remember this, when we think we somehow fool ourselves into thinking that everything's gonna go, here's what I'm gonna do, and it's all gonna work out great, and it ain't gonna work out great. Things are gonna happen. Maybe it'll be 90% great, or maybe 95% great, but you're gonna have some issues. Things are gonna happen. You're gonna have a flat tire one of these days. That book report that you did was gonna have some typos in it. Your speech in front of the boss is gonna, fly. You're not gonna remember somebody's name. You're gonna whatever the case may be, you get the idea, right? Things are going to happen throughout the day. You're going to order that Whopper at Burger King, and it's going to come with pickles when you ask for no pickles, right? Or the French fries are going to be old and cold. This is life. Life will not go well. It doesn't mean it'll go terribly, but it won't go well. It's messy. So just remember that. And then the Temperance comes in, because we can temper our emotional reaction to that fact when we remember that that's the case. And we get the burger, and there's the pickles. Like, oh yeah, man, so be it. Pick the pickles out, right? Okay, now the next one's a little harder. The Horror Show. Sometimes life goes so poorly as to constitute a horror level event. Like when the doctor calls you back from your routine physical and tells you you've got a disease that can't be cured, and that you will be crippled and perhaps dead within 2 years. That's a horror show level event. I use that term to describe, it's the type of thing that you could sit and eat popcorn with at the movies, and it would be labeled as a horror movie. But in this case, it's happening to you. The fact of the horror show, of course, is something that's happening to all around us, right? It eventually will happen to all of us. We all have to die. The horror of death may be momentarily. You may go out with a head-on collision into a wall in your car, or you may go out in a slow and lingering, painful death of pick your ending, right? I mean, so many ways to die a terrible death. So I remind myself of that too. That's what the principle's for, is to remind myself that not only that so that I'm ready for it myself, or as ready as I can be, but then so that I'm prepared to the fact that it's going on all around me, up and down this street. I like to say every street I've ever lived on, 10 of the houses on these 50 houses on the street are having a horror level events happen in their life right now. And it helps me to build a little sympathy, empathy, and compassion, and readiness to help, to lend a hand, a smile, or a considerate response. Usually I like to pepper this discussion with a horror level event of my own. I'm not up to it today. It's hard. This is very hard for me to do. Usually I apply it to myself. I've been doing it late. I've only started doing this about a week ago, and it's really hard. I'm going to give myself a break today. It's too hard to do. Sometimes it's too, I have to temper that. Temperance. Okay, the next one, the next principle is that which must be borne, borne with an E, carried. What we have to bear is the horror show. We also have to bear the fact that life will not go well. Then comes another principle called the Feast of Offal. Funny name for a principle. I use this principle to describe what happens when we kind of vomit up our upset onto the world, and the offal coming out, the waste. And it's a feast because other people consume it when we vomit up our, I mean, of course, nobody would ever eat our vomit or throw up our sick, but they would eat the words that we throw out, and the glances and the upset. And I mean, if you ever, I mean, we've all kind of witnessed in a voyeur type of manner someone having a tantrum. Maybe someone in our family, a little harder to watch someone we love having a tantrum, but maybe we've seen a stranger having an upset, maybe like some person that's maybe not quite mentally sound, yelling at a light pole at the side of the road while we're in our car waiting at the intersection, and we kind of look at that and like, wow, look at them, they're having a bad day, and you kind of eat it up in a way. It's that one doesn't really hurt you so much, although it does hurt because if you're not empathetic, but there is other people that will do it, and you'll kind of consume it. Like if road rage, right? Someone behind us, and they think that we cut them off, and they're honking their horn, and they're flipping us off, and stuff like that. And it causes our guts to churn a little bit. We're consuming. They're having a temper tantrum back there. That's the Feast of Offal. They're vomiting up all their upset and all that back at us, and it's soiling us because we're looking at them in the mirror. We're like, oh, we're swallowing it down. A good Stoic man or woman would not swallow that down. We would recognize that as something that's going to not be good. It's harmful to us. So we would see that we would apply apathy to let that happen, let that occur. Keep ourselves safe. Keep the distance. Move aside. Let that person drive around us. But if we're not stoic in our disposition or frame of mind, if we don't know how to use apathy in that manner, then we end up swallowing it down, and then it upsets us. And then maybe later in the day, we'll have enough, and we'll throw out our upset into the world and exude our own feast of offal, where the feast part becomes someone else then is consuming our waste, our offal. Try not to do any of that. Try to be a good Stoic man, holding my feast, holding my upset in, consuming it, digesting it, releasing it in other ways, more mature ways. There are more and better ways to do that, mostly covered in this whole Good Life Creed. Temperance being one, recognizing our true limits and our true opportunity, maturity being another. And this way I protect myself, and I protect my family and my loved ones and my coworkers from further upset. So I cut through it. That was all 5. After that comes, I believe, the best. I have to look it up again. Let's go to the book. Oh, I was right. It was the principle of distraction. Distraction is next, and there's 2 for this one. Distraction and agency in the Great Indifference. Agency is us, anything that's alive. Plants are agents too. And then the things that we make are the artifacts of agency. I'm surrounded by the artifacts of agency right here. If you can escape away from all the agents and the artifacts, and you can go to someplace like this, the Bristol Mountains in the deep Mojave Desert, and you go alone, and you go over the mountain, and you can't see anybody, and you can't see their things anymore, you can't even hear an airplane, then you'll have a chance to witness the emptiness of the universe. And it becomes apparent that the universe is indifferent to our living and our dying. I call that the Great Indifference. A universe without God. We don't want to see that, or at least most of us don't. So we cover our eyes, we cover our ears, and we go through life distracting ourselves with all kinds of things. Our work and our recreation, our family, our friends, our hobbies, our church, and our belief in God. All of these things mask the emptiness that pervades the universe. So we don't have to see that. And we don't have to realize no one's looking out for us. No one's going to punish the wrong or reward the right. And no one's going to take care of us once we're dead and take our soul and put it into a happy place for all eternity. and sequester us away from the bad people who go to their own place. None of that seems like it's really going to happen. We're just going to be gone. An absolute end of oblivion. So we distract ourselves all our lives. I don't want to do that. I would rather witness the Great Indifference. I have, many, many times. That's what going alone is about. Going alone is discovering that, and then developing a favorable, positive response, which is to turn myself back to my society, my home, my family, my work, my coworkers, my loved ones, my strangers, etc., and tend to work to live a virtuous life, striving after ends that will make the world a better place in the limited amount of time that I've got left. It's going alone is not leaving society. It's the punchline is coming back and living a good life, a good, purposeful life of community. Okay, next after that is, so can I take a guess? After that comes distraction. Oh, the best seat in the house. To not want to be anyone else, be anywhere else, or be doing anything else, but to be right here, right now, who I am. All the while striving to be better in every way. It's like doing this. I'm okay here now, but I'm also going to work towards better places and better me and better circumstance. Talk about ambition. Okay, after that comes the best seat in the house comes, what does come next? My memory is not serving me well today. Oh, it's 4. The Restless Man, the Path of Wildness, the Great Life Adventure. Did I say 4? I meant 3. The Restless Man. Humans have this kind of innate restlessness, men more than women, I think. And we have this restlessness. We always want to kind of like do something, have an adventure, do something, go somewhere, be something, etc. This restlessness kind of drives us forward, and it's, if you have it, and some people have it more than others. Some people don't seem to have it much at all. If you have it, it's good to attend to it because it won't go away. And I believe it comes from the old days when we were hunter-gatherers and we had to kind of push out beyond the horizon to find new resources. We are restless people. It's that thing that you feel that drives you. It might be the thing that led you to find this video, maybe. If you attend to that restlessness, you might find yourself stepping onto what I call the path of wildness. The path of wildness is a way forward from a current life circumstance through the wilderness to some new life circumstance. It's a choice. It can be a difficult choice. When I was living in Japan, it was a choice that people would contact me about, and they're saying, I'm living in some safe and sane somewhere. I want to come live in Japan like you did, Kurt. How do I do that? And I would say, well, collect facts, give yourself some time, think them over, and then make a decision. And if you need more time, give yourself some more time. But ultimately, you just do that all for the rest of your life, spend your life collecting facts and thinking it over, and then your life is passing, you never did much of anything. Eventually, you might just reach a point where you have to make a choice. If that happens and you still feel like you don't have all the facts, then maybe reach inside and what is your gut telling you to do? And then lean into your gut. The funny thing is that it doesn't matter if it was the right choice or the wrong choice. Stepping upon the path of wildness is its own reward, even if you fail. Even if you lose all your money, even if you get hurt, or even if you get crippled, even if you wind up looking the fool. And funny enough, even if you die, you can't really fail stepping upon the path of wildness. However, you can't make that gamble with the welfare of others. So that's why I suggest doing this when you're young and single, before you have taken on board responsibilities. Once you have put a ring on it, once you've, unless you've put a ring on it with someone that's willing to take those risks with you, like I did, That's the thing that Yumiko and I have in common. My wife Yumiko and I have in common is that we both enjoy being on the path of wildness every 5 to 10 years. Especially once you have kids, you have to be very careful. You can't gamble too much. You can go on the path of wildness with the kids, but you have to do it in a way that doesn't compromise, doesn't risk their security and well-being. It can be done. I've done it twice with a kid. But it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of money, and it takes a lot of willingness to commit. So that's the path of wildness. Now the next one is the great life adventure, which is the result of stepping on the path of wildness. You wind up with a great life adventure. It becomes a story and a centerpiece for your life, something to shine the flashlight of memory upon later when you're living your life, and this thing that gives you the best stories and causes your smile to lift more from your eyes than the corners of your mouth. And then I think that's it for that one. Yeah, the Restless Man, the Path of Wildness, the Great Life Adventure. Next comes the risk of avoiding risk. There are 2 levels of risk in life, the surface level and the deep risk. The surface level risks of life there's 5 of them: education, career, family, home, and security for your old age. It's good to go for those things. But if you go for those things exclusively, you might miss out on the chance to address the deeper risk, which is finding some way to answer your question about just who the hell you are. Finding yourself, the things that the hippies asked us to consider. Go find America, and in so doing, find yourself. You have to do that again when you're young, and it's good to couple that with the path of wildness and the great life adventure. If you get on the path of wildness after your college years, and take 5 years between 25 and 30 to be on the path and have great life adventures, you will successfully assuage the deep level risk. You may not need to do it more than once, and you'll have it for the rest of your life. Then from age 30, you can attend to these 5 up here, and then you wind up having a more richer and fuller and complete life. If you postpone the deep dive until you're old, you're probably going to find that the dive is hollow and shallow and without much substance. It's hard to have a great life adventure when you're 65 years old. You're too old and scared, and most of all, you're too wise. You know better than to make the mistakes, because it's the mistakes that yield the best fruit. Okay, so that was that one. And the next one is sin and damnation. There are 7 sins in my worldview related to, they're sins because they're sins against well-being. They're sins against virtue. They're sins against common sense. These are falsity, being untrue, being a damned liar. Credulity, believing things that are untrue, that may be untrue, being damned gullible. Faith, believing things based on belief. Just because we want to believe, it's a shortcut, it's lazy, it's gullible. Superstition, believing things that are categorically identified practically as nonsense. You dig deep and you're going to find they probably don't have much substance to them beyond a Bigfoot photo of Loch Ness and alien abduction stories. It doesn't mean that they're not true, but highly suspect. Dogma, believing things because it's a blessed tradition. Authority, believing something because the person that's saying it seems like they know what they're talking about. That's not good enough reason. And then gossip, talking about other people behind their back. Not going to do that. All of these things are sin that lead to damnation in the here and now. We live a damned life because we're damned liars, damned gullible, or damned gossips. The next one is complete oblivion. After death, there'll be no afterlife. We won't see our loved ones again because we won't exist. They won't either after they're dead. We won't have a chance to reconcile any differences because we won't see anybody after we're dead. And there won't be any final justice because it seems that there is no afterlife. There's no soul. There is no God. Justice is for the living. So attend to our relationships and our mending fences and to helping to create the just and good city while we have the chance, while we're alive. Next comes the season of philosophy. Sometime in your life, if you live a good life, You might find yourself having words come to your mind. They just come out of nowhere somewhere. It's like the muse is talking to you. I recommend keeping a pen and paper handy, a journal, to write those down, and write them down as soon as they're there, because they tend to fade away. The muse goes off and talks to somebody else. That's your season of philosophy. Write it down and then leave it somewhere for your loved ones to find when you're dead. So you'll have left your words behind. Next is, after the season of philosophy, is the bullseye aim. Life is where we're shooting for the mark, trying to hit the mark, but we usually miss. The uphill climb, steady upward climb. Every day higher than the day before. Greater vista, more of a view, colder, clearer, cleaner air, even though my body is becoming more and more crippled and weak and clouded. My ascent nevertheless continues. And then arena and utility. Life is an arena for the development and maintenance of our utility, of our objectives and principles. And then nothing is enough, the second to last principle. Suggestion that if we can get by with less, let's get by with less. Less and less. Until we can finally get ourselves down to just a few square meals a day, a good roof over our head, a good set of companions, and good, sound, solid objectives and principles to live and strive for. And then lastly, the principle of fun, a reminder to have a good time today, a reminder to remember the good times of yesterday, and a suggestion to look and remember and think about the good times to come, plan for them, make a good life by planning for good days, using all of the principles at our disposal to distill out our best life from the material of each and every day that comes to us in the remaining days that are left. There, that's it. That's my Good Life Creed. 7 objectives, 32 principles that I use to live a better life. Now, let's plan the day out. I'm done with this. I'll start this upload. I'll go over there. I'm going to read I read a chapter of the Bible every day. I'm going to read my chapter of Ezekiel. I then am going to edit a page of one of my books. I just do everything in bits and pieces throughout the day. So I'll edit that. Then when that's done, I'll go downstairs. I'll feed my dogs. I'll walk my dogs. Then I'll come upstairs. I'll change into my work clothes. I'll fire up the computer, and I'll get busy. I have good meetings today. I have good objectives to do, and I'm going to make it a good, productive day. And there the dog just kind of got up and he's looking at me. He's saying, Dad, it's almost time for us to go to the next stage. Yes, he knows the routine. I do too. I'm going to wish you all the best. Be safe, but not too safe.